You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. This is season 3. It is episode 46. The Cubs sweep away the Southsiders, Crawly. Don't forget to listen, download, review, most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow on the socials, Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And, of course, you can email Crawly and I at flythew670@gmail.com. Well, Crawly, the Cubs were able to win both games, ironically enough, by the same exact score and in somewhat the same exact manner. I wish I felt a whole lot better than I do at 1 o'clock in the afternoon after beating the Southsiders 2 straight, but I don't feel that great, Crawly.
No, I mean, you're always going to take the sweep over the Southsiders, but like you said, it just, my God, has had a bad team. They're on pace to lose 120 games. And this is one I was saying to myself, okay, let's kick it into gear here. And I wouldn't say as much the Cubs won, more that the Sox lost, you know?
Right, exactly. You know, who did the Cubs win or did the Sox give it away? And I mean, they find a new way each and every night to give stuff away, not just against the Cubs, just in general. I mean, they are playing at not only they're about to set a franchise record tonight, losing 14 straight games. So to struggle and have to come from behind 2 times to a team that's basically the equivalent of the Birmingham Barons. I mean, they did get their best player back, but he only did one little thing. So it's very frustrating right now.
Yeah, game 1 featured Shota Imanaga versus Chris Flexen, and both of these games, the first halves were absolutely awful for the Cubs, and then they came storming back in the second half of the games. Remember when in that last start in Milwaukee, Shota only had 1 strikeout, and we're a little nervous about that. Through the first 3 innings, Shota had 5 strikeouts and gave up only 2 hits, one of them a cheap infield single that if Imanaga would have taken his time, I think he would have made the play. Instead, he kind of flipped the glove and lollipopped it, and the runner reached. But that takes us to the 4th inning. Andrew Vaughn, who had the other hit, he had a couple ropes off of Shota, but he led off the inning with a single. And then Luis Robert, who was just activated from the IL before the game, singled to put runners at first and second, no outs. Former Cardinal Paul DeYoung then hits a bouncing chopper. It's a tailor-made 5-3 double play. So Christopher Morel just has to hold it, step on third, and throw to first. And it clanks off his glove.
That's Vaughn a word scores. For it. That's a word for it. Clank.
Clank. Vaughn scores. The ball gets stuck under the padding, so the runners go to second and third. So first thing here, Dustin, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in Christopher Morel? Like if the playoffs were tomorrow, and I know they're not, would you be comfortable with him at third base?
Maybe a 6. 6. That's about as high as I could go. 6.
I'm gonna go 5 right now.
5. Yeah, okay. Maybe I'm being generous. Maybe I'm in a generous mood at the moment. But 6 at best. 6 at best.
It's not just errors. It's like infield singles, is getting to bunts. There's just a lot of things. And so instead of 2 outs, no runs, and a runner on second, the Cubs trail 1-0. There's no outs and a runner at second and third. Gavin Sheets would pop out for the first out, and then Corey Lee doubled to left to score 2 more runs to make it 3-0. Danny Mendick rounded out, and then Leon Sosa hit a 2-run homer, and the Cubs were down 5-0. Now, look, I know the error is bad. I'm not going to say that helps things any, but on the last podcast, we asked about Shota, was that Milwaukee start a result of the 10-day layoff, or was it regression? Our team's starting to figure out Shota, coming up with a game plan for him. I mean, we've talked about how bad the White Sox offense is, worst in baseball. I'm not saying that this was all Shota's fault, but, why are you giving up home runs to Leon Sosa? I don't even know who that is.
Lenin Sosa. Yeah, I just got a text from the group, everybody liking to poke the bear that Sosa just homered at Wrigley Field. So, yeah, hilarious. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But do you think that these teams are starting to kind of figure out Shota, or was it did that air just rattle? I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here.
Well, I think there's an approach. I think there is approach. I think there's a book. Now, the key is that Shota and Tommy adjust to the adjustment, right? I mean, that baseball is a game of adjustments, and now it's the Cubs' turn to adjust when this stuff happens. I think they fouled it up. I think they gave him too much rest. I do think that was too much rest. I think he should have started game number 1 in that series against the Brewers on the holiday and pushed everybody else a day back. But, I'm not the pitching coach, and I'm obviously not the skipper of the Cubs. I don't think he's been figured out. But, again, I didn't expect him to have a under 1 ERA for the entire season, right? I mean,
Right.
nobody's that pig-headed, even me. So we'll see. But thank God for the rain, Crawly. All I know is thank God for the rain, because I don't know that the Cubs win that game without that rain delay.
Right.
They had one hit. They had one hit when the rain came.
I was going to bring that up. Is that was another frustrating thing about the first half of the game. Flexen comes into the game with an ERA of 6, and like you said, only one hit off the 4 innings, and then things get really weird. I don't know if you watch this on TV. On the jumbotron, there's a message, and I've been there I was at the game on that game, and on Tuesday night with our buddy, and we were sitting there, and all of a sudden on the scoreboard it says there's thunder, get to find cover, seek cover. And they put that message on there, but they continued playing the game.
Right. So who's in danger here, right? Yeah.
Right. And so they cleared out the front half of the bowl, but not underneath the awning. So it was really kind of a really strange sight. But then eventually Corey Jukes would double to lead off the 5th. Andrew Vaughn flied out. The rain came down. Tarps pulled on the field. 40-minute delay. No surprise that Shota's night was done. Tyson Miller comes in. He gets the next 2 batters out. To me, what was surprising is that Chris Flexen came back out after that delay. They hadn't touched him.
So surprising. I was shocked by that. I mean, it was fine. I mean, the Cubs didn't really make a whole bit of dip, but I was surprised by that move.
Right. And they hadn't touched him before. They only had the one hit. And then Ian Happ leads off with a double. Bush pops out and Swanson doubles. So the Cubs were trailing 5-1. That's the first run there. He comes out in the 6th, and then Justin Anderson's first out of the pen. He got the first 2 outs before he grazed Cody Bellinger to keep the inning alive. I think it hit him like in the back foot, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And just like with Seiya Suzuki against the Reds, Christopher Morel had a chance for redemption. He hits a 2-run blast. Wrigley comes back to life. The Cubs are just down 5-3. Pedro Grifol takes out Anderson, replaces him with Tanner Banks. Ian Happ singles, and Counsell decides to pinch hit Patrick Wisdom for Michael Busch. Wisdom responds by launching his 5th career pinch hit home run to tie the game. And now Wrigley is absolutely rocking, right?
As it should be. And Crawly, for as much crap as I'll raise my hand, is given to Craig Counsell, that was a great move. That's the feel of the game. And I'm sure there was also some data to back up what he did. But to me, that was feel. He just had a feeling. He went on a hunch. He had a gut. He has an eye test. He knows what happened in batting practice. He knows who had what for lunch, who had what for coffee. Like, he knows. And I think that is something that is a reason why Craig Counsell is here. So tip of the cap on that move.
Absolutely. And the Cubs do tie it up. You got a new ball game. Hayden Wesniewski comes out of the pen. He gets the first 2 outs, but then Luis Roberts, again, just activated before the game, clobbers a home run. At the moment, I'm like, just please pitch him around him. I just kind of felt bad about that.
And clobber is another good word, right? I mean, you got all the adjectives to that. I mean, that was absolutely hammered.
About 3/4 up on the center field bleachers, I would say. It was left center. But, the Sox retake the lead 6-5. The White Sox crowd is now getting loud, chanting, "Let's go White Sox," which is like nails on the chalkboard to me at the friendly confines. In the bottom of the 8th, time is running out. Jordan Leisure comes out of the pen, gets the first out, but then he walks Cody Bellinger. Then the first of 2 mistakes by the White Sox here. Christopher Morel's going to hit one to shortstop Paul DeYoung. He struggles to get it out of his glove. Everyone is safe. I thought that should have been an inning-ending double play. Instead, The Cubs have runners on 1st and 2nd, 1 out for Ian Happ. Ian Happ hits a fly ball to right field. Bellinger and Morel score. The Cubs lead the game for the first time, 7-6. So now the Cubs need 3 outs to win it. Heart attack, Hector Neris comes into the game, right? He gets Lance Sosa to line out for the first out, but walks pinch hitter Oscar Colas. Never in 1-2-3 inning with Neris, never. Now, Pedro Grifol uses Duke Ellis, who just got called up that day, youngster, super speedy, easily steals second. We know the Cubs situation with throwing out runners, right? Ellis, for some reason, is on second, and he's dancing like MC Hammer, going back and forth doing that MC Hammer dance, right? He's just missing the parachute pants is the only thing he was missing there. I don't know. What is he doing over there? And so Neris...
Getting everybody's attention, that's for sure.
Right. Neris throws back, and he's safe. And then they were saying on the broadcast yesterday, Ryan Flaherty is the one that calls that. So Flaherty signals to Amaya, who hits the button, and then Neris goes for the second pickoff throw in a row. They catch him, and he is out, second out of the game. Corey Jukes pops up to end the game. Just like that, Dustin. I mean, what a boneheaded mistake. Unbelievable.
Bonehead mistake. That's one way of putting it.
That was the biggest comeback of the season for the Cubs, down 5 runs. Just an absolute turnaround before the rain delay. The Cubs had gave up 5 runs, had 1 crucial error, no runs, and 1 hit. After the rain delay, the Cubs scored 7 runs on 7 hits, 2 home runs. Cubs take game 1.
But some people didn't think the rain delay had anything to do with it, Crawly. I think it had a lot to do with it.
You know, again,
there were also reports that during the rain delay, several Cubs teammates of Christopher Morel went up to him and encouraged him. And he referred to it after the game, saying to, how much that meant to him that his teammates had his back after the error.
Right. And you don't know how much it affected Fedde. If the rain doesn't happen, does Fedde go 2 or 3 more innings?
Right. And the Cubs are still sitting on, and Flexen's got him 1 hit. Right. I could have seen the game being 7-1 at that point, maybe.
Right. It could have, I mean, to say it didn't have any effect, I don't think is fair. I mean, I know people want to pretend like this is a game that's only played by computers, but they're human beings. And Morel was down. And Morel's a guy that does wear his emotions on his sleeve. And I'm sure that the guys picked him up. And you saw when he hit the home run, his face, and then, all that stuff. And so I think it played a difference, to be honest.
Absolutely. All right. So game number 1 is in the books, right? The Cubs get that first one, 7-6, the final. Very exciting game, up and down, round and round. And then we move into game number 2. No rain in the forecast here. We got Jameson Taillon against, I guess, the White Sox number 2 pitcher, Eric Fedde. A lot of love going on by Sox fans that this is the guy that they're all backing right now.
Dustin, did you know that the last time the Cubs won back-to-back games was exactly 1 month ago, May 4th and May 5th against the Brewers?
I didn't, but it sure feels like it.
Literally 1 month ago since the Cubs string together 2 Ws. And it looked bad right away. Corey Jukes homered off the first pitch of the game.
How is that possible? That so set the tone, so put me in a foul temperament. The first pitch of the game, I mean, I'm no good at baseball, Crawly, but I swear I could have gotten a piece of that ball. I'm sure it would have went foul and probably right into the catcher's mitt. But that was that was meat. That was right down Main Street.
Yeah, and that one almost ended. I don't know if it ended up on Waveland, but
it went to the back row.
Back row puts the White Sox up 1-0. Now the Cubs come back at the bottom of the second. Christopher Morel single, stole second, and advanced to third on an Ian Happ ground out. He scores when Nico grounded to short, and Paul DeYoung tried to get Morel at home, but the throw was late. The catcher drops the ball. Game's tied at 1. Michael Busch and Dansby Swanson both single, and the bases are loaded with 1 out. But Jan Gomes struck out, and Mike Tauchman grounded out to end the threat. The top of the 4th is when it falls apart for Jameson Taillon. The first 3 White Sox hitters singled, and now the Cubs are down 2-1. Tommy Hotovy comes out. Taillon gets Paul DeYoung to fly out for the first out. Then Taillon gives up 2 more singles to make it 4-1 before Corey Jukes flied out for the second out. And then the Sox scored 1 more run on Nicky Lopez single. There was a play at the plate, but Seiya just doesn't have a strong arm. Every time I see it, it seems to bounce 4 or 5 times. It was a close play. The Cubs challenged it. The call's upheld. The Cubs are down 5-1. Dustin, 9 men came to the plate, scored 4 runs on 6 singles.
Unbelievable. And I let's go back to the play at the plate. I mean, Counsell, I think, has been pretty good overall on the replays. What the hell was he looking at? That was not close. No. He was out. You know what else I didn't like, Crawly? You know what else? What do you think? You were at that game last night?
No, I was not. I was on the couch last night.
Okay. Did you notice what Jan Gomes did after the play?
What'd he do?
He's patting him on the backside. Oh, no problem. Oh, good job. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
We need a Michael Barrett.
We don't need that either. But somewhere in the middle, okay? We don't need to be helping him up. We don't need to be, oh, good job, good effort. Sorry for the inconvenience. Sorry you had to get your pants dirty. It's all good. No, thank you. No.
You were not the only one frustrated, Dustin, because in the bottom of the inning, Nico was ejected by home plate umpire Vic Carapazzo for
How about that? The first time he's been ejected.
Yeah, and when you sit there and you're going to yourself, okay, Nico never gets ejected. I mean, that has to be an absolutely egregious call if Nico, I mean, he was fired up, and it was whatchamacallit. To me, it was a quick ejection, I thought.
Yep. It was.
I didn't like the
I
call.
I agree with you.
I thought, I mean, both pitches were really, really, really bad. And I think that in general, I would have preferred Counsell maybe even get tossed. I know you don't want to do that all the time, but if you take a look, and if you're watching this on 670, the score, I mean, they're not even close. The second one was outside of the strike zone. The third one looks like it's a good 4 or 5 inches outside of the strike zone.
And they're a little bit high.
Right. I don't know what he's looking at there. And so, Tyone pitched the fifth. His day is done. He went 5 innings pitched, gave up 5 runs on 10 hits, 1 walk, and 6 Ks. Dustin, again, he started off really good after being injured. And the last few starts, I have zero confidence when Tyone comes to the mound.
And I saw a tweet this morning. I forget who put it out there, but the Cubs, everybody likes to say the Cubs don't want to spend. They're not spending enough. I think the Cubs are spending enough. I don't think they're spending correctly. They have like $49 million invested in Drew Smiley, Kyle Hendricks, and Jamison Tyone. You know what you're getting from that group? About that much. You're not getting a whole heck of a lot. And it goes back to the other day when we had the conversation about the quality start. That was not a quality start. My ass. Right. So disappointing to say the least.
Well, just like the night before, everything switches in the 5th inning. No rain delay this time, but Dansby Swanson and Mike Tauchman single. There's 1 out. Seiya hits one to second. Fetty kind of doesn't get over in time, so the White Sox don't make the throw. Seiya beats the throw, and that's crucial as Cody would hit into a force out. That should have been the final out of the inning. Dansby scores to make it a 5-2 game, runners at first and third. Then Fetty balks in a run to make it 5-3. So the White Sox at this point are literally just giving the game away.
Giving it away. I mean, I mean, all of a sudden now, going back to the Hector Neris balk, I feel like every time I would watch a Cubs game, there's a balk. I wonder if you can bet on that, like a prop bet.
Sure.
Right. Like in the Super Bowl, the big fun Super Bowl bet is, will there be a safety in the game? I wonder what kind of odds you could get. Will there be a balk?
Right. And that was the first of 2 mistakes the White Sox would make. They'd make an additional 2 mistakes later. In the 7th inning, we get into just a crazy inning. Dansby leads off the inning by getting hit by a pitch. Yan Gomes, he of the 148 average, is walked. They walk him. I mean, put it right down the middle against Yan Gomes. Then Mike Soroka balks. That's the second balk of the game. What are the odds he would get on that one? That puts runners at second and third. Tauchman works an 11-pitch walk, and the last pitch to walk him is a wild pitch. Swanson scores. The Cubs are down only 1 run. Bellinger hits a sac fly to tie it. Morel would walk, and he would have to come out of the game because he fouled another ball off his front foot. That has to be about the 20th time I've seen that happen to him.
Yeah, that looked awfully painful. And I'll tell you what, even though Mike Tauchman had a wonderful night, that 11-pitch walk might have been the at-bat of the game, to be honest with you.
Right. And then Ian Happ would single to put the Cubs up 6-5. So just to recap that inning, hit by pitch, walk, balk, wild pitch, sac fly, walk, single. 3 runs on 1 hit, that hit being a single. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that is absolutely crazy.
So now the Cubs have the lead for the first time in the 8th inning. Hayden Wesniewski comes in, and the very first batter he faces, Paul DeJong homers to tie the game. Dustin, what's that old Yogi Berra saying? It's like deja vu all over again?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, since May 23rd, Hayden has given up at least 1 home run in 4 of his last 7 appearances. So not great here. And then the game is tied in the bottom of the 9th. The Sox stud reliever, Michael Kopech's on the mound, throws massive heat. And Mike Tauchman, who is 1 for 3 with an 11-pitch walk, is up to bat. He hits the second pitch he sees to center field for his first walk-off of his career. What an unbelievable way to end it. But Dustin, we were talking, you get excited, you swept, but I've been saying that this Cubs team is not clicking. It's not clicking. And if one thing is working, then something else is not working. And that's just kind of how it's been. And the Cubs bats were absolutely struggling. And now all of a sudden you're taking a look in the last few games, they're hitting the ball. They got 7 runs against the White Sox in both games.
They're making contact. That's for sure.
Right. A Saturday against the Reds, they had 7 runs. They're hitting the ball, but now the starting pitching, which was helping them so much, has struggled, and defense and relief has always been a problem with this team. So I will always gladly beat the White Sox, but it's kind of like bragging about beating an 80-year-old man with a walker. Are you really that tough of a guy? I mean, I don't know. Mike Talkman, Dustin, he is what should be the Cubs' backup outfielder. He leads the Cubs in wins above replacement, 1.4 per Fangraph. If Mike Talkman is the best player on this team, that's the problem.
They aren't going anywhere if that ends up happening. Right now, he's kind of like the straw that stirs the drink, if you will, for this ball club. And it's no offense to Mike Talkman. Love his story. Love the way he approaches the game. But he cannot be the best player on offense for the Chicago Cubs. You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. This is season number 3. It's episode 46. The Cubs sweep the Southsiders. Don't forget, listen, download, review, subscribe to the podcast. Leave us one of those 5-star reviews if you don't mind. And you can email us, flythew670@gmail.com. And don't forget, you can also get some cool statistics and graphics up on the screen while you watch us on the 670 The Score YouTube page. So, Crawly, Baseball America has just released their updated top 100 prospect list, and the Cubs are tied with the Mariners with the most players on that list. And in this segment, you're talking to Geoff Pontes about some of the Cubs' most highly rated prospects.
Joining me now on the Fly of the W podcast, you see his work at Baseball America. Please welcome Geoff Pontes. Geoff, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, man. Not too bad.
Now, I was excited because Baseball America periodically updates their top 100 list, and I got to say, the Cubs are looking pretty good here.
Yeah, I think over the last 2-3 years, they've done a good job of just acquiring kind of a wide range of talent. There's no set sort of like prototype for the type of guys they're going after. They've drafted athletes. They've drafted, hit tool guys from college. They've drafted power hitters, a lot of pitching. I think the stuff in the Cubs system in comparison to kind of historically what we've seen over the last 15 years where, even during the winning years, there were not a lot of homegrown pitchers throughout sort of Theo's reign. And it took a little while to kind of get the pitching side of things going. It seems like they have that going now. There's a lot more interesting arms in the system. Guys that have made some strides over the last couple of years, like a Michael Arias or someone like that, I think is kind of a big development win for them. So I think it's a really well-rounded kind of interesting system. The thing that they sort of lack is that sort of elite stud top 15 type of prospect. I think Shaw probably had some buzz like that heading into the season that he could head that way and just hasn't hit as much as he probably needed to get that kind of a boost. We're all still really high on Matt Shaw's potential, though.
And I think one interesting thing is that when you take a look at a lot of the Cubs prospects, they tend to be very young for the level that they're playing at in comparison to the prospects they're going up against, which, you might say a year or two difference in age. What's the big deal? But, developmentally, physically, it's a huge deal.
Yeah. And I think it shows how advanced some of those, position players are in particular. He hasn't gotten as much coverage, it feels like, this year, but like Owen Casey is a guy that is different from a lot of their other prospects, but is an interesting, power hitter with great on base skills and, enough athleticism to play, full time in the outfield without major question marks. He's still pretty young. I think you consider the fact that, he was a Canadian high school player as well. And just in terms of the types of competition they're facing and the reps that they're getting, it's just not on par with, your typical Dominican players that are down in these complexes and academies at 14 and playing against a bunch of future MLB superstars, or in the prep circuit or college. It's just a little bit different. So I think that's something we see with a lot of just cold weather players in general. But he took a huge step forward last year, handled the Southern League, which was generally is not an easy place to hit. But beyond that, it was sort of even accentuated because of the pre-tack balls that were used for the first half of the season. And, Casey was able to handle that well, despite the fact that, the four-seam fastballs he was seeing and some of the breaking balls were moving significantly more than they do at other levels.
So how often would you say that Baseball America updates their top 100 list?
So we update now monthly. So this is like the third update of 2024. I would say it was our biggest update though. A lot of like the March update, which I know we talked about off air, a lot of that is just kind of cleanup. Players that got traded, moved. Maybe there's somebody in spring training that's just getting a ton of buzz. And a lot of it for us at that point is kind of lining up the players that are going to move on to the list as players graduate. And we had a lot of players at the top of the list this year that graduated within the first, 2 month and a half of the season. So there were a lot of players that got added in updates. I think Ballesteros was actually one of those. And you saw how high he climbed, I think up to 80, up to 86 before we even updated. And that was just based off of graduations. We had that many players come off the list. So then April, we update a little bit more in terms of maybe moving off some underperformers, or, players where, I don't know, there's maybe a player that we're more excited about. We're getting better feedback because the process isn't just our opinion and us watching games. I think what differentiates Baseball America from a lot of the other prospect sites is it's less of our personal opinion and it's more based on our reporting. So, which is different from what my approach had been when I had started Prospects Live. I had started that media to just do my own evaluations, go to games, right? When I thought about a particular player, where Baseball America, it's much more of like a traditional news approach, where it's not to say that we don't have opinions, that we don't go and see players, that we're not shooting video and breaking down stats and data and all the other stuff we have access to. But a big part of it is talking to not only scouts, data analysts in the pro and on the amateur side, talking to front office people and executives that obviously, have this sort of thing is within the breadth of their job. And so that's a lot of what drives the list. And I think this was our first update where we really sort of heavily leaned into some of the feedback. We have, that 30, 40 game sample size now on a lot of these players. And it just gives us, a lot more confidence in the moves that we're going to make. So I would say that this was the first one where we really got aggressive with some players moving way up the board and then some additions as well at the back end.
Now, you mentioned the term graduation. Explain to our listeners what that means when someone graduates from the top prospect list.
So it's a rookie eligibility thing. We differ a little bit from Pipeline and Fangraphs and some of the other sites that are out there. They count service time and service days. We don't do that. We don't get involved in trying to calculate that out because it gets a little murky at times, especially at the end of the season. And we've even seen times where guys like Nolan Jones a couple of years ago had supposedly passed rookie eligibility and then entered last season and was actually, they declared him rookie eligible again. So we just stick with a hard counts. And I think that makes it easy for our subscribers. And sometimes it's kind of interesting because players that are not technically rookies are still ranked within prospect lists. I remember years ago before I was here, Tyler O'Neill was ranked like within the Cardinals top 10. Even though O'Neill had technically graduated from rookie status, he was still under 130 at bats. So that's our hard count. Once a guy is 131st, not plate appearances, but at bats, 131st at bat, we go by that hard number, which is technically what the rookie eligibility is. It's just at the major league level because of the service time stuff. They mix in the service time days. With pitchers, it's 50.1 innings. So once you get that extra out, you're complete. I know I'm bringing up a lot of Cardinals here on the Cubs podcast, but they're just good examples. Alex Reyes is like the one that burns in my mind. Alex Reyes actually blew out at 50 innings and then sat there on the list for another year and a half because he just needed one more out. If Alex Reyes had gotten one more out, he would have graduated from prospect status. But as luck would have it, he was dealing that day. I can remember I was not working for Baseball America, working sales at the time, driving around in the car, listening to Alex Reyes on the MLB radio, and then he blows out his elbow and then is on prospect list for another year and a half because he didn't pass that one out threshold we needed. So sometimes it's frustrating with the 130 and 50 at bats. For example, like Shane Baz is still eligible for our list, so we had to make some tough decisions on him. Had we gone by service time days, Baz would no longer be a rookie eligible. So eligibility with us is a little different than it technically is. And with actual rookie eligibility, there's this element of it that's a little bit tough to figure out. The best place to go and check on service time days, if it is something that you're interested in, I think is the baseball reference pages. If you look at the top of the baseball reference page and drop down that bio, it actually tells you if the rookie status is still intact or not.
Now, as far as Cubs are concerned, you mentioned that one of the biggest jumps was Moises Ballesteros. He goes from 86 all the way up to 62. He's a double-A right now at the Tennessee Smokies. What is it that you guys are seeing in Moises Ballesteros? Because I'm telling you right now, like one of the big issues for the Cubs, that Miguel Amaya has been called up at one time, one of the Cubs' top prospects. And it's just been a struggle as far as with the bat and throwing runners out. Now, I know Moises, very, very good hitter, but, how is he doing as far as fielding the position and throwing out runners?
Yeah, I think there's some question there, as far as where does he end up long term. It's a question as to whether he ends up a catcher or not. I mean, it's a bad body, right? I would say in terms of physical comp, you're probably competent to Alejandro Kirk, who's lost some weight. And it's funny because Kirk was a guy that I think a lot of people thought couldn't stick behind the position. He's a really good blocker and a really good framer. He's not their primary catcher in Toronto. I actually cover the Blue Jays in addition to the Cubs as well. So I have some like for like comparison here. I think he's more going to be a guy that if it works defensively at catcher, he'll be a part-time fill-in. Seeing some time at first base. He's probably best suited as a DH. And I think that the reason that he's on this list is how young he is and how good the production is. From a hit tool standpoint, it's an easy plus hit tool. Just throwing some metrics at you here in terms of, overall contact rate. He's above an 80% contact rate, which is kind of like looking at metrics. That's a plus number, especially for a player that's as young as he is. In zone contact, 83%, once again, above average to plus number. Chase rate, 21%. So his plate skills are really good. He gets the bat and the ball consistently. He doesn't expand the zone very much, if at all. And the pitches that he swings at in the zone, he hits at an above average rate. It's a left-handed hitter with power. I mean, for as young as he is, 105.4 mile per hour, 90th percentile exit velocity. I think the biggest thing with him is just elevating his best contact. He's not a guy that sells out for power. So, he's not selling out for pull side fly balls consistently. Spreads the ball around a little bit, which is going to boost the batting average, but maybe limit some of the home run upside. But I think just from a skills perspective, when you look at a guy like Ballesteros, you're looking at a player who could project to be a 280 hitter with, 20 home run power, that, maybe doesn't have defensive versatility, but is the kind of hitter that's really, really valuable because he can move runners along. He puts the ball in play. He's consistently going to give you really quality at bats and work deep in accounts and make the pitcher work to get him out. And I think with young players, that's something that we definitely value quite a bit. I think the other thing is you kind of look at the current sort of population of prospects right now, and it's kind of a down period in comparison to what it had been the last couple of years. I feel like we have a lot less up the middle defensive profiles. So guys that are playing catcher, shortstop, center field, and sometimes those guys move off of those positions, but they're at the highest part of the defensive spectrum. So when they move down, they're still providing defensive value. We haven't seen a lot of guys with those defensive profiles that also are hitting. So guys like Ballesteros, another guy, Ralphie Velasquez from Cleveland, who's kind of a questionable catcher with good power and good hit. These guys are getting on the list because I just don't think we're getting the performers with the up the middle profiles like we used to. And a lot of those guys are moving much faster up to the big leagues than previously. And I think some of it is obviously the prospect promotion incentive, which has certainly pushed some teams, I think more competitive teams, to get their prospects up a little bit faster because of the benefit of getting that extra draft pick, and the bonus pool money that comes with that really allows you to do a lot more in the draft, get more creative in terms of pulling down maybe somebody into your second pick that you couldn't without that money, without that pick. And then I think the other side of it is there's just been a rash of injuries, whether it's pitching or hitting. I feel like, we're seeing, a lot more Tommy John surgeries, it seems. We're seeing shoulder injuries. We're seeing a lot of lat injuries with pitchers too, which I think when guys are chasing velocity, it kind of tracks. It's the elbow or the lat that's kind of shouldering a lot of that wear and tear. And then on the hitting side, we're seeing a lot of guys with oblique injuries. And I think the reason these guys are hurting their obliques on a regular basis is because of how hard they're swinging the bat. We see a lot of guys now that sort of have A swings, meaning they're using their best swing, trying to elevate every single time. So it's kind of nice when we do see prospects like Kevin McGonigal, who's on this list from the Tigers, Ballesteros from the Cubs that we're talking about, that do kind of have that ABC swing and can adjust to different counts and, are much more focused on getting the ball in play than just doing damage, which, depending upon the profile, sometimes that makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't.
Now, Kevin Alcantara is also with Moises in the Tennessee Smokies, and he goes from 84 to 64. So he has a nice jump as well. The question with him is always just because of his body type, all the levers moving around that, will his swing play in the major leagues? What are you guys seeing with Kevin Alcantara?
Yeah. So, I think skills wise, there's still some growth here, but I think he's a guy where the term prospect fatigue probably applies to a degree because he's been around so long. He was obviously a highly touted Yankee signing years ago. He's still only 21 years old, and he'll be 22 in a couple of months. But this is a 6'6" player who is a plus runner. He's got a plus arm. He's plus in center field. Had it not been for PCA, who's one of the best defensive center fielders among prospects at this point, he's probably the best defensive center fielder or outfielder in the Cubs system besides PCA. So he's a standout out there. I look at that. I look at the fact that even when he does struggle with some swing and miss because of the longer levers, he's not running a 30% strikeout rate, 26.2% as of recording this. Hasn't always necessarily had luck. I think, what we've seen from Alcantara too is it seems like the beginning of the season, he consistently sort of struggles over the first month and then kind of gets things going. And that kind of feels like what we saw this year, just in terms of numbers since April 30th. He's now hitting 282 with a 331 on base percentage. The home runs haven't been flying as much as we probably would like to see. But overall, I think if you look at that, you can see, I think if we bring it down to remove that first series of May, he's now hitting 304, 354. So the contact is coming along. Strikeouts are going down. I think that when you look at the type of power this guy has, 107 mile per hour, 90th percentile exit velocity. Wow. I mean, that's huge in terms of like ex-Wobacon. So that's WOBA on expected WOBA on contact. So it's looking at every batted ball he puts into play. It's looking at the exit velocity. It's looking at the location. It's also looking at the launch angle of the ball and trajectory and all those sort of things. 375. He has a higher ex-Wobacon than Ballesteros and some of these other guys that are ranked ahead of him. So, I think the thing with Alcantara is he's kind of one of these players in the minor leagues where you got to sort of ignore the numbers a little bit because of how young he's been at higher levels. He's in the upper minors now. The Southern League is not an easy place to hit, and it's not an easy place to hit for power. We look at the run environment in a place like AAA. He gets called up to AAA. The strike zones are different. He's now dealing with the ABS for the first time. He now has the challenge system on the weekends for the first time with a zone like bigger zone like his. That's going to help a lot. We kind of saw that similarly with Ellie De La Cruz. I'm not saying that Alcantara is Ellie. He's not. But when we're talking about a big, tall, athletic, exciting player with massive upside, but probably some pretty significant valleys in terms of his struggles, he's like that. I want to bet on guys like that that have tools. Those are the guys that when we look back 3-4 years down the line, we're like, we should have been higher on that guy. Because something that we've noticed is like 22, 23, 24 years old, exit velocities stagnate for prospects because most of the good guys are getting called up too, right? But there's not a lot of additional power you're adding. Really what happens in that mid-20s to late 20s to early 30s phase, and we see it with a lot of players, is the skills get better. The contact gets better. The type of decisions they're making at the plate get better. And it's because they're getting their sort of 10,000 hours, so to speak, right? They're getting that experience. They're seeing it. hitting a baseball is humanly impossible, right? So, like, scientifically, it's humanly impossible. But our muscle memory is so good that allows us to do that. And I think as you see these numbers, because when we look at the bigger picture of the entire player pool, contact rates and chase rates consistently get better and improve all the way into guys' early 30s. I mean, you look no further than a guy like Jorge Soler. When Soler first came up, Soler's skills were bad, right? And it meant even kind of Schwarber to an extent, right? Like those guys played themselves off of that Cubs roster more or less. And they've improved since. And it seems like every year those skills get a little bit better. You know, we saw Soler get a big free agent contract. We saw the same thing with Schwarber. He's been a major part of the best team in baseball over this, stretch with the Phillies. I mean, I think you just see that. And I think people get so panicked because guys' skills aren't necessarily up to par at 22, 23, 24, when it's a long road and baseball is not like football. It's not like basketball. And I think that American sports fans at times struggle with that concept because, we see Anthony Edwards get drafted at the top of the draft. He comes right in and he's a star for the Timberwolves. We see Jason Tatum get drafted, come right in and be a star for the Celtics. Luka, same deal. There's not that development phase, really. We see it sometimes with quarterbacks, but a lot of that stuff is happening behind the scenes when Mahomes is sitting for a year. Jordan Love is sitting for 2 or 3 years. Rodgers is sitting for a year. Brady's sitting for a year. We don't see that development in front of our eyes. We don't see the struggles that happen in practice. So I think it's easy for people to be like, oh, this guy's a bust and write him off. If we go back and we look, there's so many players that struggle in their first sort of, touchdown in the major leagues. And then 2-3 years down the road, we look back and like, that's an above average regular. It's a game of struggle. It's a game of adjustments. It's a game where you never stop learning.
And that's something, when you talk about that, that's Pete Crow Armstrong is another example that he got called up last year in September and people were freaking out. And it's like, he only got like one at bat a game and was really used for defensive purposes. And he's looked like a totally different player in the major leagues. He's still he hasn't graduated yet. My guess is it'll probably be in the not too distant future, but they sent him down and they really kind of missed his spark plug, his energy. And now he's back and hopefully getting some regular playing time. Obviously, the glove is just unbelievable. But, when he went back down to AAA for that limited time, he was hitting the hell out of the ball and they brought him right back up. So, like you said, going through those struggles for PCA at the major league level is a normal thing, and people got to be patient with that. Now, as far as Matt Shaw is concerned, the Cubs are using Christopher Morel at third right now, and it's an experiment. What are you seeing from Matt Shaw at Tennessee that do you see him maybe sticking at third, or do you see him being more of a second baseman?
I'm not gonna write it off. Shaw's from my neck of the woods in Massachusetts. I saw him play high school baseball. Saw him actually summer of 2020 playing in the Futures League before he went to Maryland. Saw him on the Cape because I cover the Cape League. Probably saw 20-something games over that historic summer that he had where, he had one of the great Cape seasons of all time. Really ran it end to end, was was MVP quality player in that league. And then won a championship and, had some big hits in that championship game against Brewster. So I think Shaw is just a gritty winning ball player. He's one of those guys that kind of gets that mentality. But I think if you know his background, working class family from Massachusetts, not a guy that was super highly touted. Northeast prep guys, like we don't get as hyped up as the guys from Florida or California or Texas or Arizona or the Carolinas or Georgia. But I think like he has that sort of like hair on fire, playing 100% all the time type of mentality. And he's really good at a lot of things. He's a really excellent hitter. I think, maybe we're not seeing the numbers this year, but just in terms of the plate skills are there. There's power, 105.2 mile per hour, 98th percentile exit velocity. Line drive plus fly ball rate is over 55%, which is a number that we look at. He does damage, doesn't swing and miss all that much. I think he's just had some bad batted ball luck this season. As far as the defense, I never thought he was going to stick at shortstop. I had some questions on the arm. I thought he was probably a second baseman long term. But I know that he spent the entire offseason working at third base. And I think he's one of these guys, just from a mentality standpoint. I don't want to eliminate it. And I don't certainly want to write it off, because I just think he's the kind of guy that will put in that work, as we saw this offseason, to get his defense up to that point. And, in terms of like actions and internal clock and all that sort of stuff, it was always good. I think my biggest question mark, at least from what I've seen, was the throwing arm and just the power there. But that's also something that players can improve. I mean, we saw Mookie Betts, was an infielder and then became one of the better, throwing corner outfielders in baseball. So it's certainly something that, mechanically, strength-wise, that you can improve. And I think that the internal clock, probably allows him that arm to play up a little bit. I mean, we've seen that from Dansby Swanson, who has one of the weaker throwing arms in all of, Major League Baseball, but is still a really good throwing shortstop, because his actions, his transfers are really quick and really clean. And he consistently gets the ball on the spot, and his internal clock is good. He's able to get a quick release. So there's ways to play that up beyond just like raw arm strength. So I think he definitely has a shot to stick at the position. And I think that, the Cubs moved him there for a reason. And Christopher Morel is probably most valuable as a multi-positional asset that, can fill in a bunch of different spots and, give you some spark offensively.
Now, finally, the guy who makes the top of the list for the Cubs, it's Cade Horton. He did get promoted to AAA, and as you mentioned, he just got shut down with a lat injury for 4 weeks. So with Cade Horton, like you said, guys are throwing really hard. You got these lat injuries, but to me, I thought he was looking really impressive in AAA. What were you seeing out of him?
Yeah, I think that, you could see that there was definitely some struggle with the automatic zone initially. The walks, especially in those first 2 starts, you see, 4 walks in 4 innings. Up to that point, in the first 4 starts in AA, he had walked 2 total batters. He had hit 3, but he only walked 2. And he had 4 walks in those first 2 starts. Got hit a little bit, gave up a couple of home runs, in that second start against Columbus. And I think that's something you consistently see with AAA. It is arguably the hardest environment to pitch in. I think you can make a case just from like the strike zone and some of the other things that you're dealing with in AAA. And it's harder to execute at that level than it might even be at the major leagues. Like, it's not that the competition you're facing is that good. It's not. But the strike zones are really tight. And I think there's some calls that you might have gotten your whole life that all of a sudden, when it's an automatic TrackMan zone, it's a lot tighter and you're not getting those calls. Like, I can remember beginning of the season, I saw Blue Jays top pitching prospect Ricky Tiedemann before he got injured in AAA. First inning, he comes out, he's shoving. I think he struck out the first batter of the second inning. Second batter, he's got 2 strikes on him. Throws a pitch. It's called a strike, right on the edge of the zone in the outside part of the plate to a right-handed hitter. He's a left-handed pitcher. Hitter taps his head for a challenge. They go to the challenge system. It was a 1/4 of an inch outside the zone. And you got to think about how small a 1/4 of an inch is. That's a pitch that guy has gotten consistently throughout his life. And now, not only could he not get it because it's an auto zone game during weekdays, there's also a chance that he gets the call, and then the challenge happens because hitters are smart and they know if they challenge stuff on that outer half, they got maybe better than a 50-50 shot to get that. I think it really screws with the pitcher's mentality. You think you punched a guy out and then you got to go back and do it again. And you're like, where the hell am I going to throw it? If he's got no reason to swing on that pitch on the outer part of the plate. Now I got to land that into this tiny little part of the zone, this sliver of the zone. And I think it's an adjustment period for a lot of these guys that aren't just control mavens. I think the guys that we see that have had a lot of success in AAA right out of the gate have been guys that just throw a ton of strikes. So some of those fringy calls are not as worried about as much. And then it becomes, that guy throws a lot of strikes, but maybe he's going to get hit up when he's living in the zone that much in the major league. So it's a little bit of a give and take. I think we started to see over the next two starts against Syracuse and then against Indianapolis, we started to see that sort of prime Cade Horton. Starts weren't tremendous, but they were much better. Only a single walk in each of those. And then that last start was pretty disastrous, but I think he probably was dealing with an injury as he only went an inning against Louisville. So
yeah,
I think you can take AAA results with a grain of salt, and the fact that he did have this lat injury, we don't know if it was kind of barking at him the last couple of starts and could have had some impact. But I think we tend to expect guys to struggle in AAA just because of the setup with that zone. It's so tough.
Well, Geoff, I mean, the future looks bright for Cubs fans. Where can our listeners find your work and find you on the socials to keep up with what's going on as far as these prospect lists?
Sure. Yeah. All my work is at baseballamerica.com. Of course, plenty of podcasts. I think I do 2 or 3 podcasts a week on the Baseball America podcast feed, which is obviously free as well. Baseball America is a subscribe site, allows us to all do this because we are full-timers. It allows us to do this full-time. And, we've really covered the whole sort of gamut of baseball too. Everything from, college baseball, amateur baseball, the draft, of course, the minor leagues, the major leagues, fantasy baseball as well, analytics. We have, a wide offering of information that baseball fans can dig into of all sort of shapes, sizes, and sort of interests within the game. And then on social, probably main social, still Twitter or X, if you call it that. It's at Geoff, GeoffPontesba. I'm also on Instagram, a little bit on TikTok, but most of my work goes on to Twitter and then probably secondarily Instagram.
Well, Geoff, thanks for jumping on, and we look forward to talking to you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, man.
This is season 3, episode 46. Cubs sweep the Southsiders of the Fly the W670 podcast. Don't forget to listen, download, review, subscribe to the podcast, hand out one of them 5-star reviews. You can email us, flythew670@gmail.com. And yes, we are on YouTube. All right, Crawly. So after taking 2 from the Southsiders, how do things look standing-wise?
All right, the Brewers still in first place, 36-25. But look at our Cubbies, 30-31. They are back in second place. The Cardinals struggling a bit, 28-31, 7 games back. Pittsburgh, 28-32, 7.5 games back. And Cincinnati, 28-33, 8 games back. So kind of pretty much jumbled in the division. Everybody's really close to each other except for the Brewers. And again, 6 games is a lot, but it's not insurmountable.
Just a quick update with the graphic, Crawly. The Cubs are now 31-31. They're 500. They're only 5 back of the first place Brewers, and the Cardinals are 29-31. They are 6 back. So the Cubs are playing 500 ball. The Cardinals are playing 483 ball. So just a slight change, but every game matters. I want to point that out. So there's no, well, it's just a game. No, no. Every single game matters. And if you're listening to this, you probably die with every single game like Crawly and I do. So I just wanted to point that out to everybody listening. All right. All-star game voting, Crawly.
I don't know. I mean, who would you, let's just say you're not a Cubs fan. Let's just say you're a baseball fan.
Okay.
You wouldn't go with Michael Busch.
Nope.
I couldn't make the case for Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, Christopher Morel. I'm not even going to bring up the catchers. Nobody in the outfield. I mean, it's got to be Shota, right? That's about it.
It's got to be Shota. Maybe Bellinger. Maybe.
To me, I would go with maybe Javier Assad over Bellinger. That would be my number 2 if I was to say 2 guys.
Okay.
We'll see how he does. But
so 2 pitchers. All right.
Right. I just can't see a position player making it from the Cubs right now.
Well, they'll get votes because it's Chicago, but they won't be deserved. That's for sure. All right. Roster moves. We got some kind of crappy news on Cade Horton, who we thought somehow, some way might be in the rotation or in the back of the bullpen.
Yeah, he was diagnosed with a strained right lat. He's going to be shut down 3 to 4 weeks before starting his rehab in Mesa. Colton Brewer and Keegan Thompson are both getting their rehab work done in Iowa. Both pitchers made appearances in a doubleheader on Friday for Iowa. It was Brewer's second rehab outing, and for Thompson, it was his 4th appearance. So we'll see if either of those guys are going to be coming up anytime soon. I don't think so, as far as compared to what the Cubs have on the roster right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath. That's for sure. All right, Crawly, we got one of your favorite things happening later today, the start of a 4-game series against the last place Reds. So this is some time for the Cubs that if they really do want to win this division, this would be a good start.
Right. And so the Reds are in last place, but just be careful. They've won 4 games in a row. They've won 5 out of their last 6 games. They just finished up a sweep of the Rockies, scoring 29 runs in that 3-game series. The Cubs just saw the Reds last weekend when Cincinnati took 2 out of 3. On Friday, remember, the Cubs had 2 big base running blunders. There was the Dansby Swanson rounding third too much, and then Nick Madrigal getting thrown out at home. The second game was the game that was the pouring rain game where Seiya committed the error and then hit a grand slam all in the second inning. The Cubs come back to win that one 7-5. And then the Reds took the rubber match 5-2 with Ben Brown giving up 4 runs in the second inning.
Yep.
So that takes us to the tail of the tape right now. The
Tail of the
Cubs,
tape. Ding, ding,
Yes,
ding,
sir.
ding, ding, ding.
they are averaging, as far as their hitting average, 228th. That is 25th in baseball. They are tied with the Reds for that. So you remember last weekend when they played, the Reds were 29th. Now they're tied with the Cubs for 25th. Slug, though, the Cubs are slugging 371, which is 23rd in baseball, while the Reds are slugging slightly more, 375. They're the 21st slugging team in baseball. Starting pitcher ERA, the Cubs are 11th, so they've dropped in that with some not so good starts lately. They're at 362, while the Reds are 15th at 4.07 ERA. As far as reliever ERA, the Cubs are 22nd at 4.36, and the Reds are 13th, 3.71. And when we talk about fielding, the Cubs are 27th in the league at 21 defensive runs, negative 21 defensive runs saved, while the Reds are 24th with negative 12 defensive runs saved. So even though the Reds are in last place and the Cubs are in second place, however you want to put it, the Cubs are in the bottom third in hitting average, slug, relieving, and fielding. I mean, that's 4 out of the main 5 categories that you kind of look at here. And then the Reds are actually, doing a little bit better. Their bullpen is definitely better than the Cubs.
Yep, they are. I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, the numbers are the numbers, right?
Yep. And so speaking of numbers, game 1, right-handed
Game
pitcher,
1. Here we go.
Javier Assad versus right-handed pitcher Hunter Green, 6:10 tonight when
That's
we're recording this.
This is a tough one, Crawly.
Yep. Assad is 4-1 with the 2.27 ERA and 12 starts, 61 strikeouts and 63.1 innings pitched. Assad struggled against the Cardinals, giving up 4 runs in 5 innings pitched with 8 strikeouts 2 starts ago. He got back on track against the Reds on Friday. He gave up 2 runs on 5.1 innings pitched with 7 Ks. I remember those 2 runs that scored that inning. He was getting squeezed on that, but Javier is 0-1 with the 2.30 ERA. He hasn't given up a run in 2 starts at the Great American Ballpark. Jake Fraley's 4 for 11, Spencer Steer 3 for 11, but TJ Friedel is 1 for 9, and Jonathan India is 1 for 8.
Yeah, I think Jonathan India might show up on that hot list as we go through this thing.
Yep. Hunter Green is 3 for 2 with the 3.44 ERA and 12 games started with 76 strikeouts in 70 innings pitched. 2 starts ago, he dominated the Dodgers, giving up only 1 run in 6 innings pitched. But the last time he pitched was against the Cubs in the monsoon on Saturday night. Nobody could grip the ball. He gave up 5 runs on 3 hits with 5 walks in 6 innings pitched. So he hit batters. There was walks. He just couldn't grip it. So Green is 3-1 against the Cubs with a 4.33 ERA and 5 starts. Nico Horner is 3 for 11. Morel is 2 for 9, and Seiya's 3 for 8. Green throws that 4-seamer that averages 98 miles per hour, a slider, and an occasional split finger. That'll take us to game 2. Just the battle of the lefties, Justin Steele versus Nick Lodolo. Another night
Game number 3. Is this a 3? Is this the third game or the second game?
Second game.
All right, second game.
So Justin Steele is 0 for 2 with a 4.10 ERA and 7 starts, 36 Ks and 37.1 innings. 2 starts ago, he had the best start against of his season against the Brewers. He went 7 shutout innings, but he also pitched his last game on Saturday against the Reds, like in that monsoon. He went 5 innings pitched, gave up 5 runs. Only one of them was earned, as he was the victim of that Seiya drop ball error. Justin Steele is 2-3 with a 6.68 ERA versus the Reds. And he is 0 for 2 with a 12 ERA in the Great American Ballpark. So kind of be aware of that one. You might want to bet the over. Spencer Steer is 5 for 9. Tyler Stevenson is 8 for 13. But Ellie De La Cruz is 0 for 6. Nick Lodolo. When we talk about Nick Lodolo, Nick is 5-2 with a 3.11 ERA in 8 games started, striking out 49 and 46 innings pitched. His 2 starts ago against the Cardinals, he went 5.1 innings pitched, gave up 1 run. His last start was on Sunday against the Cubs. 6 innings pitched, gave up 2 runs. Lodolo is 1-1 with a 4.02 ERA versus the Cubs. Nico is 3 for 8. Ian Happ is 2 for 7 against Lodolo. Lodolo throws a 4-seamer, curveball, and changeup. Now that takes us to game 3, Ben Brown versus left-hander Andrew Abbott. Ben Brown 1-2 with a 3.33 ERA, 61 strikeouts in 51.1 innings. He had his best start 2 games ago, pitching 7 no-hit innings against Milwaukee with 10 Ks. He faced the Reds in his last start on Sunday, and he only went 5 innings pitched. He gave up 5 runs on 6 hits with 6 Ks. That's been his only start against the Reds. Jaime Candelario was 2 for 3 in that game for what it's worth. Andrew Abbott is 4-5 with a 3.39 ERA with 52 strikeouts and 69 innings pitched. Abbott made his debut last season with the Reds, was a second-round pick for the Reds in 2021. He struggled 2 starts ago against the Cardinals, giving up 6 runs in 6 innings, but he righted the ship against Colorado, which isn't hard to do. He went 6 innings, gave up 3 runs with 6 Ks. I mean, it's still impressive when you have to go to Coors Field. That place plays like crazy, but the Cubs do not have too many at-bats against Abbott, who features a 4-seamer, a sweeper, and changeup. No one has more than 4 at-bats against him. And that takes us to game 4, Shota Imanaga versus right-handed pitcher Frankie Montas. This one's going to be 12:40 Central Time. Shota's 5-1 with a 1.88 ERA in 11 games started, 65 strikeouts and 62.1 innings pitched. Shota got bombed 2 starts ago. We talked about that in segment 1 against the Brewers.
Sure did.
He gave up 7 earned runs in 4.1 innings. He did not get a decision against the White Sox. He gave up 5 runs, but only one of them were earned due to the Morel error in 4.1 innings. The Reds have not seen Shota Imanaga. And then Frankie Montas was one of the big Reds free agent acquisitions in the offseason. He is 3-4 with a 4 ERA in 11 games started. He had a 6 ERA in April and a 4.88 ERA in May. He had one of his best starts against the Rockies on Tuesday, pitching 7 scoreless innings. Montes has never faced the Cubs, and the only guys that have at-bats against him are Cody Bellinger and Yan Gomes. Only a couple at-bats for both the guys. So nobody with the Cubs are really familiar with Montes. He features a 4-seamer, a split finger, and a cutter.
All right, very good, Crawly. Who's hot and who's not?
How about Mike Tauchman? 4 for his last 11 with a home run and an RBI. He is slashing 364, 462, 727 in his last 7 days. Ian Happ picking it up, and just at the right time. We know he loves hitting in Cincinnati. 6 for 17 with a home run and 6 RBIs. He's slashing 353, 450, 647. And Dansby Swanson picking it up, 5 for his last 18 with the home run and 3 RBIs, slashing 278, 350, 556. Unfortunately, on the flip side, Cody Bellinger, 2 for his last 18. He does have 3 RBIs, but slashing 167, 238, 222. And Michael Busch is not getting a lot of at-bats ever since PCA got called back up. 6 at-bats, only 1 hit. So that was my danger, is having him stagnate on the bench. It's going to be really hard for him to get in any kind of rhythm.
Yeah, absolutely right. How about on the flip side for the Reds?
They are all hot right now. Spencer Steer, the hottest of the hot, 11 for his last 25 with a home run and 5 RBIs. He's slashing 440, 481, slugging 640. Right behind him is Jonathan India, 8 for his last 19, 1 home run, 6 RBIs, slashing 421, 500, 684. I mean, Dustin, when I look down this, most of their batters right now in the last week, again, against the Cubs and against Colorado, though, they're all hitting pretty much 300. TJ Friedel is the 10th best hitter at 286 right now. So doing pretty darn good. The only one that's really cold during this last stretch is Ellie De La Cruz, who is 5 for his last 27.
Well, let's keep that going, and remember not to run on him. Right, if he's going to cut the ball off, we're not going to run on.
Right, we're not going to run on him, and we're going to make him earn his way on the base, because that guy could wreak havoc on the base paths.
Yeah, and we know that the Cubs cannot defend the running game. That's for sure. All right, Crawly, prediction time. 4 big ones out in Cincinnati. I'm going to let you go first this time.
I'm going to go with the split 2-2. I'm not really confident in Justin Steele at the Great American Ballpark. I don't know what to expect out of Shota. I think Ben Brown is going to have a good game. That's my opinion. I might be wrong, but I think that game 3 is one that the Cubs are going to take. So I like game 1 and game 3.
I'm going to say 3 out of 4. I'm going to go 3 out of 4. That's that. I'm going to go one better than you. I think the Cubs are waking up at the right time. I think all these pitchers that are throwing coming up all have a little bit to prove, each one of them. And I think if we set the tone properly tonight, each one will be competing against their own member of the pitching staff. So I am going to go 3 out of 4. We'll be back Sunday night, Monday morning to recap. And I believe the Cubs have a Monday off following the 4-game set. So follow us on the socials. We'll let you know when the episode is going to drop when we are reviewing Cubs Reds. So that's a wrap. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram. Of course, we're on Twitter. Also, flythew670@gmail.com. You can email Crawly and I. And don't forget, we'll remind you one more time, you can watch us. That's right, by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel. Crawly, enjoy the games. No Skyline chili for you. No chili over the weekend. You can't eat that when you're playing the Reds. It's not allowed. And go Cubs, right?
Yep, and I will tell you one thing. There's a lot of guys going out to Cincinnati. Again, don't eat the Skyline chili. Start scoring some runs and be careful in that bandbox. Go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!